What's up, everybody? It's Leo and Josh with another episode of 713 Football, man. Last night, we got some crazy news that Nick Chubb was interested in the Texans and the Texans were interested in Nick Chubb. And Rappaport tweeted, free agent Nick Chubb, one of the most decorated players available, is expected to sign with the Texans on Monday if all goes well with his physicals. Man, Josh, what do you think about this? Nick Chubb, we talked all offseason about, enhancing the run game and making the offense as simple and easy for CJ to do what he's best at, which is push the ball down the field. Josh, what do you think about the acquisition of Nick Chubb, or the potential acquisition of Nick Chubb for the Texans?
Yeah, man, I think it's a great finishing piece to what they're doing with a complete facelift, a renovation. If people watch those renovation shows, this is like the last bit where they're really making that kitchen really pop, where they can get the best value for it. And they're trying to put a situation where they have CJ, like you said, at his highest level, where he's able to attack the middle of the field off of play action, force teams into single high that he's just absolutely murdered over and over again. And I think you can get that with Nick Chubb. And I think the reason it's exciting is because it's a low-risk, high-reward play. I think it's going to be a one-year deal. I heard reporting from Ari Meyerhoff that he's gonna maybe take less money guaranteed than he could have gotten from other places and have more incentive-based contract here. Now we'll see if that comes out, but that's kind of what the reporting is as of this Monday morning when we're recording. So that's kind of where we're at. I think if they build it off of that, if they build it off very similar to what we did with Cam Akers last year and brought him in when he was coming off of two Achilles, and in reality that Achilles shit is way more terrifying than a guy like Nick Chubb who's been through knee injuries. He knows how to rehab. He's already doing these crazy box jumps and squats and everything. But I think it's a really good, solid move that can supplement and give you insurance in case Dameon Pierce isn't able to transition to this new offense, and just so Mixon doesn't get worn out all through the year.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And at points last year, especially when Mixon went down, right? There was no real physical element to the offense. Now, we have to, Nick Chubb has to prove that he can still break all the long runs and all that stuff if we're going to talk about him being an elite running back. But one thing Mixon is, he has always been, is a really tough physical runner that does not go down easy, that fights for every yard. And I think when we're moving to this gap scheme, I assume we're going to run a lot of duo runs also and stuff. You want guys that just literally just land body blow after body blow after body blow and force the linebackers to really think about, okay, well, I have to take a step forward or I'm going to lose at the, point of impact against the running back. And I think just those little, couple false steps in a play action is going to basically open up the whole middle of the field, like you were saying, for CJ Stroud, who's been great. When it comes to 10 to 20 yards, intermediate throws over the middle and just everywhere, right? He's really comfortable throwing there. So the way they built this team, to me, is kind of leaning towards that, and we're not going to ask him to necessarily, obviously he's going to have to be better in the quick game, but building the offense around the strengths of the quarterback, which is attacking the middle of the field. And his rookie year, he had I think the highest or second highest air yards per completion and total air yards and all that. How do you get him to do that again? How do you get that? You run play action. You run the football. You create explosive play opportunities. And I think that us doing what we did from the offensive line, from the receivers that we brought in, and adding to the backfield like we already had a good backfield with Mixon and Pierce, and with the acquisition of Woody Marks. But like you were saying, having Nick Chubb be your second running back or third running back, however you want to look at it, it just provides an ultra just comfortable situation. It gives you a lot of insurance for really every single back, because he's a complete back, and I think, man, they really watched CJ. I feel like they have a complete understanding of what he's good at. They're not trying to force a square peg into a round hole, and I think that is how you truly get the most out of your quarterback. You build the team around what they are great at, and you ask them to kind of get better at the things that they aren't good at, kind of in an unforceful manner. You know what I'm saying? Not forcing him to be good at something he's not, for the team and the offense's success. So I think this is a great move, man.
Yeah, and I wanted to really reiterate something you mentioned about where he's come into a scheme that he really is comfortable with, and he knows how to run it, and he knows how to teach it. Most importantly, I think he can come in and he can bridge that gap for a guy like Mixon, he's played in a lot of schemes. He does gap, he knows how to run all that different stuff. But maybe he can help Mixon be more disciplined at times, be more efficient at times. I think Mixon is a great running back, but he loves to cut back, make plays, and it's good. Maybe he can add just a little bit more to him. But I think the real impact you're going to see is with the two young guys in Pierce and in Woody Marks, guys that Woody Marks did have that situation where he ran more gap towards the end with USC. But he's coming in, he's going to have to go up to that. We talked about PhD masters and everything. He's got to get that PhD class, and now he's got a guy up there in Chubb who has that PhD over and over again. Like he's in that postdoctorate program at this point, right? Like he's so farly advanced. And I think when you have that as a leader in that room, you're able to change the mentality. He's going to keep pushing that mentality to where it's going to match more of that defense, because it's something you saw with the offensive line and all that. And I think it's important to talk about we've talked about how bad the run game was last year and how the offensive line was really had struggles at times. But there was a couple other stats that really jumped off to me, and the reason they're making this kind of move to change everything, and it's why it's a finishing piece. The Texans were dead last in rush success at 40%. Much of that was due to O-line, but that's running backs too, right? There's no clean hands, tight ends. And then the field vision ranking. This is a new stat that I came across, and field vision ranked them 26 with a threat rating of 62. So they're just kind of even with a running back that was an absolute dog out there and Mixon, they were still 26 in the bottom of the league. So you bring in a guy like Chubb, there's no real downside for that. I mean, we can talk about some of the downsides and why he's still out there, but I think you add a guy who's an absolute elite player as a pass pro player across the board, like for a guy who ran the ball so much, you don't usually see these workhorse guys being as good. But since 2019 to 2022, his PFF pass blocking grade were 77, 91, 80, and 61 in 2022. Even over the last 4 years, he only allowed 10 pressures over 192 pass blocking reps. Now, you're not leaving him there a lot, but he also gives you stuff as a running back. And so I think when you have three guys, I think they're in their perfect world. It's Pierce, Mixon, and him rotating, keeping himself fresh as a committee and attacking teams and not allowing the defense to ever come up for air.
All right, so how does Chubb fit in with the rest of our backs on the team? Man, listen, Chubb is a complete back, as we said before. Like Josh just brought up, his pass protection stats automatically make him a viable piece to any football team, right? You sprinkle that in with his ability to catch the football also. Is he James White running routes out of the backfield and just breaking people's ankles on the routes? No, but he can catch the ball, get upfield. That's all we need. You know what I mean? That's all we was getting from Darray, but I think he's a more explosive runner probably, even with the knee injuries. I mean, unfortunately, but whatever. So factor that in. I think he's a perfect fit with each back on the team. Josh, man, so we already know it seems like sometimes the Dameon Pierce crowd, they've been trying to cut Dameon Pierce for like 2 years now, you know what I mean? But what do you think of between like Darray, him, and Chubb? Like how you kind of see that going?
Yeah, that's why I brought up the Nick Chubb stats as a pass throw player, because that was the one thing that was people were holding on to on offense was that, man, Darray is great as a pass throw player, and he absolutely is. But you don't keep a running back around when you now have a chance to bring in a guy who's an absolute threat in the run game, assuming he's healthy, right? That's why the incentives are based in and everything and all that. But assuming he's healthy, the run game, and then he's functional the same way that Pierce is in the pass game, right? Same way a guy like Mark Ingram was back when he was playing, where he's good enough, he can get you that check down, get you 5 to 10 yards potentially. He's still going to be a pain in the ass to tackle in space for little DBs out there, kind of trying to jump at his legs. He's a freaking unit, right? But when you tie that all together, you don't have to view it as like, okay, is it Pierce or Darray? I think they can cycle and move Darray to like a game day elevation kind of role that they kind of already teased a little bit previously, but they can go even further into that and just say, you know what? if we're not playing the way we need to do, or this is a good matchup for him in special teams, like if we really love his matchup on special teams, we can use him as a weapon and less of a crutch, right? He's no longer a guy that we're depending on. We talked about in our Woody Marks breakdown, right? We are free from needing Dare, and that's not a slight on the player, but you want to constantly upgrade, and it comes back to Nick Caserio yells about it over and over and over. I want competition across the roster. D'Amico, that's where they're so in lockstep. So I think you get that now moving forward, and I'm excited to see kind of how it turns out.
Yeah, I completely agree. So now we have to talk about some other things that people might be concerned about with Nick Chubb, right? So obviously he's coming off of a couple of, pretty tough knee injuries. You know what I mean? I think total is his third serious knee injury in his whole career, I think, But yeah, so I mean, why is a guy that was pretty much like an elite running back, like, someone that looked like they were an all-time type running back, right? Why are they still available in June? Josh, what do you think about his recovery? And I guess, parts of the year he wasn't the same. So what do you think about that? And, I have some thoughts too, but let's just start off with that.
Yeah, man. It's funny because people are freaking out. They're going back and looking at the stats. And people love to kind of get really myopic into the stats and kind of overblow them. But you got to look them in the big picture, right? Yes, he was, and this is among 51 qualifying running backs. So these are the stats. Hold on to your seats, relax, do some deep breaths. It's not pretty, but I'm going to explain why it's not actually terrible, right? So he's dead last year in yards after contact per attempt, 1.96, right? Third worst in missed tackles forced per attempt, 0.1. Fourth worst in explosive runs. Run rate of 15 plus yards was 2%. But the reason I'm not terrified of this and not kind of like saying, oh, we shouldn't even touch him, we shouldn't give him a single dollar, is because if it's a 1-year deal that's kind of incentive based, you have to factor in the fact that his yards before contact freaking fell off last year. The offensive line played terrible in Cleveland last year. He went from a 3.6 to a 1.7 last year in terms of yards. Went from one of the highest he's had, where they blocked it up well, to one of the worst he's had in his career. So I think when you factor that in, the opportunity wasn't there. It's like people freaking out about what made Dameon Pierce so special that first year, right? He was making all this shit on his own. It's the same kind of dynamic, so don't get too freaked out by that. And also, it was year one back from an insane injury in 2023, right? Like, the injury I've heard someone characterize it similar to what happened at Tank Dell. Like, it was that level of, like, obviously Tank Dell is a whole nother level because it's a littler guy, but like, it's insane that, so asking a guy to come back year one, that was basically just getting those reps up. He was like prepping for the next year. And then he got hurt again, right? In 2024, but from everything I've heard, this injury wasn't as bad. This wasn't something that was going to really impact his abilities. Isn't something like a long-term thing that's like really worrisome as much. Especially you see him doing those crazy ass box jumps where he's hitting his head through the ceiling and shit. And he's doing the squat reps that are just freaking people out, right? So I think when you do all that, and the fact that he's coming off now year 2 of a full ACL reconstruction, all the medical professionals say this is where that jump is. So the fact that we're able to nail this value here is really exciting to me, and I think it's how you can maximize value. It's another like stroke of genius by Nick Caserio.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And what I want to add on to that also is it's not like we're banking our whole rushing offense off of him.
Absolutely.
Or even our third down situations. We're not banking it all off of him. Essentially, we have a guy that is like, we have one of the most high football character guys. We have a complete dog, veteran ass running back 2, running back 3, however you look at it. We have a guy that can come in and spell Joe Mixon and do similar things to him. And, because at points last year, it looked like they didn't trust Dameon Pierce, and Dameon Pierce was hurt. You know what I mean? So, to me, I close off with this. I think that when you look at talent in the NFL, you look at all these talented teams and how devalued the position of running back has been in the past like 10 years, really. It doesn't make sense to not have a running back room that is like 4 deep with guys that you feel comfortable with. And with these guys that we have now with Pierce, with Marks, and with Mixon and Chubb, potentially, hopefully by the time we finish this video, it's already done, right? But you know, to me, I look at that back and I look like, yeah, that's a backfield I feel comfortable with going deep into the playoffs with, and I won't be uncomfortable with our running backs, and we should be able to run the football. Like Josh said, one of the worst team in the NFL with rushing success rate, and I think that we have done everything pretty much possible to kind of reverse that trend, you know what I mean? And built this team specifically for CJ, man. And like we said before, I think that this is a situation that if everything plays out right, I think Stroud can win an MVP in this situation if we all stay healthy, man. So Josh, bro, you got any final words?
No, just y'all let us know in the comments what y'all think about everything, what your opinions are. Who would be the guy out? How do you think you should handle the depth chart if you bring him in? What do you think the contract should look like? We want to hear all about what y'all are thinking. And if you really enjoy this, even if you want to be a hate, subscribe to our channel, like the video. Like I said, comment. You can become a member. We got Clutch City level, we got Astro World level. So just let us know what y'all think, and really, we're excited to keep putting out stuff for y'all, and we're excited to keep talking with y'all.
All right, y'all, man. Peace, y'all.